All right. Thank you to everyone who's joining, and welcome to Ask the Experts, our weekly AMA session to help businesses in the cannabis industry grow and scale. I'm your host, Maria, and I also have Spencer here with me.
Hi, everyone.
How this kind of works is our amazing guest, Naomi, is going to introduce herself, and then we will dive right into questions. So please just drop your questions in the Q&A section, and we will do our best to get to them. We don't have long, and I know everyone is excited to learn from Naomi. I know I am. So let's get started. Naomi, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, thank you so much. So happy to be here. Thank you for having me. My name is Naomi Granger, and I am the founder of the National Association of Cannabis Accounting and Tax Professionals. So my background is I have been an accountant for 18 years. I have my CPA license and my MBA license. And the last 7 years, I've been working exclusively with cannabis operators in the cannabis industry. And so what led me here was I was just looking for an opportunity to have a remote business. I did not want to work corporate. I did not want to work in a cubicle. I wanted to work for myself, and I didn't know how to do that as an accountant. And so I took a couple of online courses. I learned how to market and all those things. And then I landed on the cannabis industry 7 years ago, and I saw how underserved it was and how much help they need from an accounting perspective. And so I've been working, but I immediately saw, once I started getting into the industry, that there was a lack of information. There was a lack of resources for accounting professionals. And so that's the reason why I started the National Association, where we bring in experts so our accountants can better serve their clients. So we talk to attorneys, we talk to bankers, we talk to investors, we talk to insurance providers, we talk to all of the different players in the industry so that we can have a better understanding of what they do, what their role is, when is it time for us to contact them for our clients, and we can be that professional advisor that our clients really need.
That's awesome, Naomi. I wanted to start by asking you a quick question. I know it's tax season, so this is a very fitting time to be having you join our AMA session. What do cannabis operators need to know about taxes, about tax season coming up? Is there anything that they can prepare ahead of time? I guess if there's a couple bullet points that you can talk about, that would be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So as a cannabis operator, and a lot of people know that you're subject to 280E tax code, which is a federal tax code. It's one sentence in the tax code, and it just says that no deductions or credits allowed for any business that falls under Schedule 1 or Schedule 2 of the Controlled Substances Act. And so you're not able to write off any of those operating expenses. So it's very important that you really understand what you can and what you can't write off, because you can write off your cost of goods sold. And there's so many different tax codes out there and rules and guidance out there where you can kind of manipulate it a little bit so that it's more favorable for your business. But you need to have an accounting professional who really understands these tax codes and really understands the industry, understands your business, understands your goals, understands your risk tolerance, because a lot of these tax codes and a lot of these strategies aren't challenged. So we don't have court law that we can just lean on and say, hey, this court case over here that was just won last year allowed this dispensary to take all of these deductions. We don't have that. So right now, a lot of times we just have to look at what's out there, make our best educated decision based on the facts and circumstances of the business, based on the risk tolerance of the business owner, and then make sure that we've properly documented every single tax position that we take as a business, so that when you are audited by the IRS, which will happen, you're able to support that position and have a better chance of winning your tax case. So just making sure that you have a professional that's competent and understands the industry in place, understanding the tax code, and as well as understanding all of the other taxes that are required. So you have your 280E, that's a federal tax law, but you have state tax law. Does your state conform to 280E? Are you allowed to take your business expenses at the state level or not? Does your tax professional understand this, and are they doing the proper documentation and taking the proper deductions at the right level? As well as other taxes, your unemployment taxes, your payroll taxes, your excise taxes, your sales tax, your cultivation tax. Just making sure that you are up to speed with all of those things in order to keep your doors open and keep your business operating.
You said so many great things there, and I have so many follow-ups. But I'll just go with one of the more last things that you said. So you kind of just mentioned understanding the tax laws per state. For a dispensary who owns multiple locations across states, do you kind of recommend that they have a specific accountant per state, or can they get away with just having one who maybe understands those different laws?
Yeah, that's a great question, because cannabis is one of those industries where we don't get to benefit from having having multiple locations, especially when you're crossing state lines, because cannabis is landlocked. And so your entire supply chain has to be grown and sold within state lines. And then the state regulators are the ones in charge of how you can legally operate within that state. We don't have the advantage of economies of scale. You can't just have one supplier who's dispensing product across the country to all of your locations at the cheapest price. And so since we don't have those economies of scale, and we can't take advantage of what most businesses can take advantage of when they expand and have multiple locations, it's important that we have the proper professionals in each one of those locations. So you could have one accountant. So let's say you're just in 2 states, Nevada and California. You could possibly have an accountant who's up to speed with both California and Nevada state laws, and they're able to operate just fine and make sure that they understand, how to run your business. But depending on how big you get, now if you're, all the way across the country, you have Oregon, Massachusetts, and then a medical operation in Mississippi and all those things, then that's when things get a little bit tricky, when you need to start making sure that you have the proper specialist for that proper location. And then also, if you decide to vertically integrate in some of the states while you're just a dispensary in other states, like, it just depends on how complicated your operation is. That's when you should start looking into having more people. And it's important that you understand that the bigger your operation is, you need to have a team. A lot of businesses, when you if you're running a chain of restaurants or you're running a dental practice and things like that, a lot of times they go with that, hey, I just need one accountant and they'll do everything. Or I just need that tax preparer to just come at the end of the year and I'm good. Cannabis industry is not the industry where you can just have that one person who can do everything. Most of these operators need a team. You need that bookkeeper or record keeper who's keeping track of everything that's happening day-to-day operations, close to the actual transactions, maybe physically at your location or close there to it. Then you also need maybe that account manager who's kind of overseeing these things, as well as maybe that outsourced CFO, depending on how big you are. And you can't, if you're not able to afford to have an in-house CFO, you might need that outsourced CFO. You may also need that dedicated tax preparer who is only focused on the tax returns and not focused on being on the phone with your banker on a daily basis. So a lot of these operators, you need an actual accounting team. And as you grow and cross state lines, you're going to have to grow out that accounting department. And that's another thing that you should be looking for. Does the person that you're working with understand how to grow with you and how to build out that accounting department for your organization so that you can keep up with your business's growth?
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Naomi. So you mentioned a couple of different states right there. So I think just building off of Maria's question and your answer, how do state tax regulations vary significantly across different regions? And what impact does that have on MSOs? And for those who don't know, MSO, multi-state operators.
Yeah, and so the taxes differ when you get down to the state level taxes. So you have to understand how taxes work. So you have your federal income tax, which everybody is familiar with it. A lot of people are trying to get their taxes filed for April 15th deadline for most people. There's a 15th deadline. If you're a corporation, you might have a March 15th deadline. If you have something even more complex, you might do an extension, but everybody understands your federal income tax. And then a lot of states, most of the states of this country have a state income tax, which is similar to the federal income tax. It's an annual filing, and it's based off of your income. And I live in the state of Nevada, so we don't have that. And that's the reason why I probably will never move. But most states around the country do have a state income tax. And so you have to file that once a year as well. And when it comes to a cannabis operator, the biggest thing that they have to understand when it comes to your income tax is at the federal level that you have to worry about 280E, and you can't write off most of your operating expenses, and you have to understand your cost of goods sold and make sure you're optimizing those costs and doing those deductions properly. At the state income tax level, you have to also understand if that state conforms to 280E or not, and what can you write off at the state income tax level. And it depends on your state's regulations. So it's important that your tax preparer has read those state regulations, and then they understand exactly how to do your state level income tax. But then above and beyond your annual tax filings, which most people, that's it. That's the extent. When they think about taxes, they just think about this annual tax filings. When you run a business, you have monthly and quarterly tax filings that are required. So that's something that you're always having to stay on top of. And it also depends on your state. So state of California, as an example, they had a cultivation tax, and they got rid of that a couple years ago, like maybe 2 summers ago. They eliminate that. So now cultivators in California don't have to worry about that anymore. However, the cultivators of Nevada, they do have a cultivation tax, and they do have to file that on a monthly basis, and it's required to be paid before the end of the month filing the month of, you know, when you produce those products. You also have a sales tax, a marijuana retail sales tax, and that's for dispensaries. Some states call it, just have a sales tax. Some states call it a marijuana retail sales tax. Some states have it where you're paying depending on the potency of the product, the weight of the product, the sales price of the product. So it's and these are called, you know, there's all these different excise taxes that are state specific. And it's just very important as the operator that you understand what are the requirements of your state, and that you understand how to make sure that you're registered properly with the Department of Revenue for your state, and that you understand when these payments are due and how to make these payments. Because on top of that, not only do you need to be registered, you need to file tax forms either monthly or quarterly. And then some of the states require that you make these payments either by check or by cash in person. They don't even allow you to make the payment online. So now you have to organize, how are you going to get this payment to the state regulators? And if you're not banked, are you going to be traveling with tens of thousands of dollars of cash to pay these taxes on a monthly or a quarterly basis? So how are you going to organize that and make sure that things are paid on time, so that you can keep your license opened? And so there's just, it's just important. It's impossible for us to go into depth in this, 1 hour presentation, because you have, you have 50 states, but you have 24 different states that all have different taxes. And so you have to understand the state that you operate in. You have to read their tax rules, and then make sure that your tax preparer and your accountant also have read these rules and understand it, and that you have everything organized to where your deadlines are on the calendar. You know what documents need to be submitted. You're submitting these timely, and that you're paying them in the proper form.
So this next question kind of goes along with something that you were saying earlier. So what steps can I take in my dispensary to stay ahead of the changes in state tax laws and regulations? And then just kind of adding on to that, would that be up to the dispensary owner to pay attention to the changes, or their accountant?
Yeah, so you ideally you'd want to be able to lean on your accountant as the professional to stay on top of this, and that's why it's important that you have a cannabis trained accountant, and that's part of the reason why I formed my organization, so that we have accountants who are staying abreast of what's going on in the industry and making sure they have the most relevant information for their clients. But also, as the business owner, the buck stops with you. And if your accountant is not doing, and we see this not just in the cannabis industry, we see this in all industries, where accountants go rogue, and now the business owner is being, you know, locked up or having these hefty tax fees and penalties and back taxes that they have to pay. So it's still important that you're kind of staying abreast and that you have an idea of what's going on. And the way to stay abreast of that, especially within your state, is to be just actively involved in what's going on at the state regulatory level, making sure that whoever the cannabis control board is for your state. So I know in Nevada, we have the CCB, the Cannabis Control Board, but some have the Marijuana Regulations Board, and every single state, they name it differently. So figure out who is in charge of the regulations. A lot of times they have a website where you can subscribe to maybe their newsletter, and you can see when they're having meetings as a board. And a lot of times they also have a YouTube channel where whenever they do have a board meeting, they're uploading those meetings or they're hosting them live, and you can attend and listen in and see what they're talking about. So it's important that you understand what's going on. You're attending these meetings or you're listening into these meetings, getting the highlights, or have somebody in your organization who's staying abreast of what's happening in your state. And then also subscribing to other newsletters and podcasts, especially things like this, these webinars that we host. I know that Kaya Push is hosting, as well as myself. I have a lot of things that I host where we're talking to experts in the industry, and we're figuring out, what changes are coming, what they're seeing with their clients, and just subscribing to all these different publications to make sure that you know what's happening, because this industry is constantly changing. One of the big things that's happening right now is they are looking to reschedule cannabis, taking it from Schedule 1 on the Controlled Substances Act to Schedule 3, which will eliminate 280E, because the definition of 280E says any trafficking of any substances that falls within Schedule 1 or Schedule 2 of the Controlled Substances Act. So Schedule 3 takes it off completely. So, paying attention to, there's so many webinars lately with attorneys and other accountants and big firms who are talking about what this means and what steps and strategies they're implementing for their clients in preparation for something like that. So it's just, staying abreast of what's going on around you when it comes to this industry.
That's awesome. Thank you, Naomi. It looks like we have a live question from the audience. So Matt is asking, I have an accountant, but he isn't specific to the cannabis industry. How important is it that I get a cannabis specific accountant?
Extremely important, Matt. Thank you so much for that question. And you can, I don't know if I can give my contact information, but I have a list of questions that I typically send to cannabis business owners. Like, here are questions that you should be asking your accountant in order to ensure that they understand you and your business and your industry. So the reason why it's so important, and I'm not sure what your accountant specializes in, but other industries are totally different. The rules and regulations are totally different than cannabis industries. I don't know what state you're in, but cannabis has seed to sale, track and trace systems for inventory that you're required to ensure that you're in compliance with. There needs to be reconciliations between what's happening in your POS system in your store and these seed to sale, track and trace systems, which your accountant may have never encountered or may never see with other clients. Cannabis operators may or may not be banked. And even if you are banked, you may be highly cash centric. So cash sales and a lot of cash in your store. So there's specific cash controls that need to be in place, which your accountant may not have to do with other clients that they're working with, because everything runs through the bank and everything runs through a credit card. So all they have to do is push a button and everything just just syncs. A lot of the accounting software and the cannabis POS systems don't sync or integrate. And so you can't just push a button and integrate all of your sales transactions into the accounting software. So your accountant needs to understand how to download these transactions from whatever POS system you're using and then do an import. Now, I know some of these POS systems are starting to create an import, but a lot of times what I've seen, because it's new and they're still working out the bugs and kinks, it's not perfect. And so your accountant needs to understand that when they push that button, they still need to do reconciliations and check to make sure that it's done properly and that it's coming in properly. As well as we mentioned excise tax and cannabis specific taxes. And if you're a dispensary, you might have marijuana retail tax, but you may also sell other items like paraphernalia or CBD and hemp products that are legal products, and they're not subject to marijuana retail tax. So your accountant needs to understand how to segregate these and make sure that your cannabis sales and your other sales are not combined, so you're not paying a retail tax on total sales. You're paying retail tax, cannabis retail tax, only on the items that it's subject to. Your accountant needs to understand how cannabis operations are constantly inspected. My client just went through, I think, 4 inspections already. We're only on the 9th. And what's required for them in order to make sure the inspector has everything that they need so that you're able to pass these inspections. There's just such a host of things that are so different when it comes to the cannabis industry that you would never see in any other industry. And so that's the reason why I offer training to accountants. So if you'd like, you could send your accountant over to our organization. And we offer, not only do we offer detailed training, which helps them understand at a high level exactly what they're getting into, but we do offer continuing professional education where we bring in speakers every single month to talk about what's new in the industry. And the speaker, it's specific to accountants to make sure that they have what they need in order to better serve their operators. So yeah, it's very important. So please, reach out if you're concerned and if you need some additional guidance on that.
Thanks, Naomi. We get that question a lot. A lot of dispensary owners are asking us that, and we're not as good as you at preaching it, but we do try and preach the same, that you should always have cannabis specific, whether that's a lawyer, accountant, or a payroll software. Switching gears a little bit. So I know you kind of glossed over this a tiny bit. We were talking about descheduling, but I'm just kind of wondering, in your opinion, if cannabis were to be rescheduled at the federal level, what impacts do you foresee happening for the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. So that is the big question, because we know for sure that 280E will go away. So that's one good thing. Another thing that might happen is banking will open up a little bit more. I mean, it's still going to be federally illegal, but maybe banking and lending and access to capital and things like that's going to open up a little bit more, which provides more opportunity for operators. But then there's still a question as to how even will that be rolled out? And if you think about the marijuana in itself, it's the only plant, it's the only thing out there right now that is a scheduled controlled substance that has both a medical benefit or a medical application as well as an adult use application. If you look at every single other drug on the schedule from 1 to 5, every single other drug you need to have a prescription in order to access that. And so if cannabis is rescheduled to Schedule 3, then there's this big question is it going to become a prescription drug? Are we going to completely overhaul the industry and require you to have a prescription to get access to this plant? And then what will that do to our existing adult use, our dispensaries and our operators? And I highly doubt that is what's going to happen, but that is a possibility, because when you look at it, that is what a Schedule 3 drug is. It's a prescription drug. And so That's a big question out there. Another big question out there is what's going to happen to back taxes when they roll this out and it becomes a Schedule 3 and 280E no longer applies. How are they going to roll it out? Are they going to make it effective immediately where, hey, today we've passed this, going forward, you don't have to worry about that? Are they going to make it effective retroactively? Like if they roll it out today, it's effective January of 2024, January 1 of 2024. So this entire year, you don't have to worry about that. Are they going to even go back even further to the beginning of time when you first got your legal license and legal sales? Or are they going to make it effective sometime in the future? Hey, we're rolling this out, but effective January 1, 2025 is when you no longer have to worry about 280E taxes. Nobody knows how that's going to roll out. So that's another thing that's a huge question. And I'll just talk about on top of that, a third thing is we doubt that the IRS is going to roll something out and reduce their revenue. So what else are they going to add? Are they going to add another excise tax at the federal level that's going to make up for the taxes that they're going to lose out on when 280E taxes go away? And so there's just so many unknowns out there right now. And I've been on so many webinars, and so there's just speculation. Like there's just so many different directions that we can go with this, but I guess we won't know until we hear more from our federal government.
Thank you, Naomi. We have a question that was submitted from someone that signed up for the webinar. The name is Jennifer, and she asked, what are the advantages of outsourcing accounting rather than doing it myself?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so please outsource. Unless you have an accounting background, and you are an accountant, I would never recommend that you as an operator try to do accounting. And I mean, that goes with anything. You shouldn't do, if you're not a marketer, you shouldn't do your marketing. If you aren't a mechanic, you shouldn't be changing your own oil. Like there's a reason that we hire professionals for certain things. And specifically within the cannabis industry, unless you are just so small, your operation's doing, maybe 100,000 a year, and it's easy to manage, what's coming in, what's going out. That's good, but you can possibly do that on your own. But once you get into the millions of dollars, and also depending on what state you're in and how highly regulated your state is, and if you how many employees you have, and how many locations you have, and if you're vertical or not, and there's just so many different aspects. It's important that you just have a professional that really understands the industry, and understands accounting in order to do that. But yeah, if you do have an accounting background and you just decided you wanted to get a cannabis license, but you still want to do your accounting and you're still small, then yeah, go for it. But it's very tricky as a business owner to wear every single hat in your business. So hire professionals where you can.
I agree with you there. So it looks like we're almost at time here. But thank you so much, Naomi, for joining us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. And, feel free to reach out if you have any questions. If you have accountants in place or a team in place and you just want to make sure that they're getting trained, reach out. Or if you need an accountant, please feel free to reach out, and we can help you.
Thanks, Naomi. And then before we close off this AMA session, can you let everyone know where they can find you, whether that's social media or your website or an email?
Yes. Okay. So it's the National, I have it on my t-shirt, the National Association of Cannabis Accounting and Tax Professionals, but we go by the acronym NACAT Pros, NACAT pros.org. So you can find us online at nacatpros.org. There's a chat widget online, so you can easily reach out to us that way. Everywhere on social is at NACAT Pros. You can find me on LinkedIn, Naomi Granger, or email me, naomi@nacatpros.org. We are there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Naomi. And thank you to everyone who joined, and everyone just stay tuned for our next AMA session.